beginning with all praises and glorification is given up to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai. Yahweh being the Most High, Yahweh Shai being the Son of the Most High. Double honors to the elders of Great Millstone. Salutations, props, honors to all the brothers who, Lord willing, are the elect that labor in sincerity, diligence, and faith to the best of their abilities, and serving this truth which is of the Most High Yahweh in the name Yahweh Shai. So I would like to go ahead and get into this quick, short lesson touching on the hell doctrine, which basically is a manufactured doctrine which is perpetuated by the modern day Roman Catholic Church, which is spearheaded by Edomites, Caucasians, but which was founded by so-called black men, the real, true, and authentic Jews of the Bible, during the period of time that they were termed as the Moors of Europe. Okay? Because there is heavy empirical evidence, there's definitive evidence that you had the Moors, so-called black men, Israelites by descent, who domineered and ruled Europe from 1903 AD fully in the 300 period of AD all the way to the 1300s in the AD era. And slowly after that, they fully came out of power going into the 1600s. Okay? So let's go ahead and get into this lesson, and we're going to touch on this Roman Catholic Church breakdown. All right. They say Catholic, but doesn't matter. Let's get into this breakdown. The doctrine of hell sprang forth from the original Greeks, who were known as the Minoans / Etruscans, which by descent were of the line of Javan, which in Hebrew is pronounced Yawan, which is one of the sons of Japhet. The modern day Japhites were pushed from throughout Europe, and a lot of them migrated towards Eastern Europe down into Asia, and eventually into an inhabitation that was similar to theirs back in Europe, which is known as the Pacific Islands of today, because a lot of those Japhetic people, they dwelt in the Mediterranean area and the area by Mediterranean, just Spain, Italy, and of course Asia Minor, even as far as to other islands, because that was the main habitation, the islands of the UK and the surrounding islands over there towards northern and northwestern Europe. So the original Japhetic people were dark-skinned so-called black people that ruled and founded Greece and Rome. Through their concept of their mythology, which was straight mythological, deliberate, false insult and offense to the Most High, because the Most High did not choose any nation other than the nation of Israel. The nation of Japhet, they created a whole mythological system of pagan so-called deities, and a lot of them that correlated to the contents of the body of the sky, such as the planets, the stars, the moons, and of course the sun. So when the Roman Catholic Church was founded in the 300 period of AD, this is when so-called blacks among the seed line of Israel came into power. The Israelites today would be Negroes in the Western Hemisphere, and particular tribes back in the land of Ham, in Western Ham, which would be West Africa today, where they descend back to with some of their relatives, but predominantly over here in the Western Hemisphere. When they came into power in Europe, they instituted from their customs, or our forefathers, I would rather say, instituted from our customs, the true belief in the true power, the true God. but they also intermeshed it with some of the Japhetic European heathens' paganry, which is why you have your so-called Christmas, your so-called Easter, and all the other BS within your modern-day mental suppressed restraint system known as Christianity. And within those doctrines that were intermeshed from the paganry into the truth, that was during that time of the time of the Moors, the Israelites ruling Europe, hell was one of those false doctrines that was instituted. And hell comes from the Greek Latin word Hades. Because Hades was that mythological realm that if you were an evil person, you would be banished to. Once you would pass on, you would die. And you'll be under the dominion of Hades. All right. And you will be burning in the river of Styx. So that's where hell originates from. It originates from that fake concept, the fake philosophy that you burn forever, which sprang from the Japhetic Greeks. Okay. So hell is not a real biblical doctrine. And you don't find hell as described within the Roman Catholic Church, which is described by the Japhetic original Greeks, the Etruscans and Minoans. You won't find that in the scriptures. So we're going to prove that in this lesson, man. The first scripture is going to be in Psalms, the 16th chapter, at the 10th verse, and we're going to go to the concordance. Click the C right here for concordance. The concordance is basically a dictionary for words in the Bible, going back into the original translations, which is Hebrew, Greek, and Latin. And why Greek and Latin is because Israelites were living in Greece and Rome. Like I broke down and already brought out, you had Israelites that were ruling in Greece and Rome in Europe. So therefore they spoke those languages. And that's how they were communicating to the Israelite foreigners who were living among the Greeks and Romans when the New Testament came about. Because that's who Israel were under dominion, under the Roman Empire during that period of time. And like I said, eventually Israel came into having control of the Roman Empire. So here in Psalms 16, verse 10, we go into the concordance, and the word for hell, as we can see right here, we're going to click on where it says H7585. That word hell, as pronounced in the Hebrew, is Sha'awal. All right. Sha'awal. Some brothers say Sha'al, but if I'm pronouncing it correctly, it's Sha'awal. And by definition, it means underworld, grave, hell, pit, place of no return, without praise of God, wicked sent there for punishment, righteous not abandoned to, other place of exile, extreme degradation and sin. Now, all those secondary definitions that's underneath Sheol, designation for the abode of the dead, is where you get that Greek misconcept from, that Greek philosophical disinformation. The first definition right here was the correct and is the only correct definition. Sheol, underworld, grave, hell, pit. And not referring to underworld as another dimension, all right? It's just talking about under the surface of the earth. And that's what hell simply means. It means the grave. It means a pit where you would bury somebody's body who's died. And that's all the word Sheol, hell in English, simply means. That's what it really means. So let's go back to Psalms, the 16th chapter, verse 10. For thou wilt not leave my soul in hell, neither wilt thou suffer thine Holy One to see corruption. So Job, when the time of judgment, he was going to be brought back to life. He's not going to be dead. His body is going to be in the earth. He's going to be back alive during the time of the Lord's ultimate judgment, the day of judgment. All right. Which comes with Armageddon, the end of this world. So it says, neither wilt thou suffer thine Holy One to see corruption. The Holy One is Yahweh Shai, who the world ignorantly called Jesus Christ, a so-called black man, a so-called man of color, that he was not going to see corruption, in which he didn't, because 3 days later he arose up from what we call death, dead, being buried away. The tombstone of his was open, and he did not see corruption. His body did not decompensate. Okay? So that's what hell simply means, to be buried. For thou will not leave my soul in hell. The word soul means the intermeshment of the body and the spirit, which means a living body. His body was not going to be brought back to life and he was just going to be in the grave. He's going to be buried underground. No, he's going to be brought back to life in the time of the judgment. And once again, that's what it simply means. This is Matthew, the 11th chapter, verse 20 on down. Then began he to upbraid the cities wherein most of his mighty works were done, because they repented not. And that's talking about Yahushua, who the word Italy called Christ. When he was doing what we call, or what's termed in the scriptures as the miracles, healing people that were maimed, that were born of physical disability. You know, the people in those cities, they were having an issue because they repented not. They were still being wicked. And you know, that's so-called Negroes today still. That's probably them niggas in California out there, and Compton and Watts and LA South Central and Oakland, the Bay Area. That's probably them niggas out there in Gay TL, Faglana, and their literal cousins or brethren down there in Miami. Cause that's where most niggas in Florida come from, Georgia, after slavery. Them wicked assholes. And likely as well, them 2/3 out in Chicago. Cause those Jakes out there, those Negroes out there are unrepentant as well too, man. They're that portion of evil Jews spoken about in the scriptures going into the New Testament and even the Old Testament as well. You Negroes are the true Jews and Israelites. And also the Israelite foreigners who descend back to you Negroes, scattered abroad across the globe. And that's probably also as well them 2/3 in New York, because, you know, brothers been out there teaching for years in New York. That's where the truth first brought this insurrection back up again, heavy on the earth out there in New York. You know, starting with Elder Abba Bivens down to King Mashai, down to High Priest Ariah, his father Yaiquab, and then the Elders of Great Millstone. Okay? And they've been out there for years, for decades. Tens on top of tens on top of tens on top of tens of years, man. And they still ain't woke up to the truth. They hear about the truth, they scoff. We see brothers out there all the time. Hell, you see the bootleg Israelites who don't have the sound doctrine, like GOCC, like HOI, like HODC, like IUIC, like ISUPK, like those Israelite camps that only believe in the Old Testament. They deal with scoffers, you know. And that's evidence right there that 2/3 still want to be asleep and they want to talk shit, which is what the word scoff means. So verse 20. Then began he to upbraid the cities wherein most of his mighty works were done, because they repented not. Woe unto thee, Chorazin! Woe unto thee, Bethsaida! For if the mighty works which are done in you had been done in Tyre and Sidon, they would have repented long ago in sackcloth and ashes. But I say unto you, it shall be more tolerable for Tyre and Sidon at the day of judgment than for you. And thou Capernaum, which are exalted unto heaven. What does that mean? Capernaum was basically like a suburb city where Israelites dwelt at. You know, you had the uppity niggas, the boule sellout Uncle Tom Coon niggas with the money, such as the Negroes that live in Baldwin Hills, California, those uppity niggas that sold out and they joined Esau, the so-called white man's secret society, such as the Masonic Society. All right, they joined the Rosicrucians. They joined some homosexual Greek fraternity, which deals with black magic and the occult, which comes from Satan. That's what Capernaum is in comparison. You know, whatever suburb that's out there in Atlanta for the bougie, bourgeois, uppity Negroes. And so the Lord Yahushua is basically talking about a city like that back in the ancient world, and it was known as Capernaum. That's why it said it was exalted unto heaven. All right, there was a bunch of uppity coon church type Negroes that are out there. Kirk Franklin uppity wicked niggas, man. And it says, shall be brought down to hell. Was it referring to Capernaum, a city being casted into a literal dimension known as hell? No, I wasn't talking about that. I wasn't talking about a city being transported, being transferred from the physical third dimension into an interdimensional realm known as hell, where it's filled with nothing but fire. That's all make-believe, man. Referring to a dimension that's made and consists out of nothing but fire. When you die and go into spiritual form, physically nothing can happen to you because you're in spiritual form. That's why you reap and sow your judgments here upon the earth via reincarnation, which in the Bible is known as the regeneration, because you can only feel pain through physical destruction, man. All right. So it says, for if the mighty works which have been done at thee had been done in Sodom, it would have remained unto this day. But I say unto you that it should be more tolerable for the land of Sodom and the day of judgment than for thee. I think that's how you say it in Hebrew anyway, referring to Sodom. All right. It says, at that time Yahushua answered and said, I thank thee, O Father, Yahweh, Lord of heaven and the earth, because thou hast hid these things from the wise and prudent, and have revealed them unto babes. And that's referring to us brothers in the truth. We're not as smart and as intelligent as these archaeologists and these scientists that deal with quantum mechanical physics and all that, you know. But we have our own knowledge that's imparted to us by the Most High spiritually for studying the truth, the spirituality that surrounds this Bible. And we go into history as it revolves around the Bible, and even extra stuff that helps, you know, brings more solidification to the facts that the Bible speaks. All right. So the Most High gave his word unto babes. He didn't give it to the most smartest guys of all time, man. The most smartest men on earth. And technically we are, because unlike these so-called smart men of the world today, these so-called smart baby Einsteins of today, you know what? We're smart by keeping the law of the Most High, Lord willing, unto our salvation in the name, glory, and power of Yahweh by Hashem Yahushai. All right. While those guys, while they'll be destroyed, though they're deemed as the most smartest men of all time, according to this world, this age, here in 2016. All right. The world of Esau, the world of the United States, the world as we know it today. They're the rocket scientists. They're the quantum mechanical professional physicians. OK, they know this, that, and the third about all the great grandeur sciences of today that go ahead and deals with that bullshit on evolution theory and the big bullshit bang theory and etc. OK. But still, it does not add up to them keeping the Lord's commandments unto salvation, because the Lord didn't give that understanding to them. He gave it to us. That's why I believe what is it in I think it's Corinthians. It's somewhere in the New Testament where it tells you about the Most High. He chose the not so wise of this world to basically confound and to condemn the wise, roughly paraphrasing. Because the Most High, he deals with the underdog. He deals with what seems like the least of man. Because that's who the Most High sides. That's who he sides with. If you're righteous and you're deemed as the bad guy and you go through all that chastisement and unnecessary, unjustified judgment, then the Lord's going to look out for you in the end. That's who the Lord deals with, man. And that's how it is naturally anyway. You know, the big fish eat small fish. That's how it is in the world. And the Israelites, specifically in particular, those who do matter among Israel currently, which is the 1/3, the 144,000, you know, we're the most bullied by our own people and, of course, by our enemies, these other nations, these other ethnicities. OK. So that's what Capernaum was. It was a city that was in the suburbs of Israel, where you had proud, uppity Jews, niggas, that were wicked. So this is the word for Capernaum, a flourishing city of Galilee situated on the western shore of the Sea of Galilee, or the lake of Gennesaret, near the place where Jordan flows into the lake. All right. Let me see. See if I can look up the word real quick. I might be pronouncing I might have spelled it out wrong. Yeah, I spelled it wrong. You know, this is a nickname that we give towards the leader of ISUPK, so-called Commanding General Gehenna. You know, and he's not no general, man. He's a sellout, and more likely a cokehead, a drug addict. That one video that exposed him for siding with Esau a few years back. All right. When you go into, as you can see right here, when you go into the New Testament for the Latin/Greek, you see the word hell translates into the word Gehenna, or you can see right here it says Gehenna, but it's really Gehenna. It says hell is the place of the future punishment called Gehenna, or Gehenna of fire, which is bullshit, because sometimes the blue letter tell fibs. A lot of times the blue letter is on point, it's accurate, where that first part of the definition was a fib. Now this is where it gets accurate right here, okay? It says this was originally the valley of Hinnom, south of Jerusalem, okay, where the filth and dead animals of the city were cast out and burned, a fit symbol of the wicked and their future destruction. So Gehenna was basically a garbage disposal dump. It was a garbage dump, man. It was an incendiary, like how you got incineraries today. A lot of times they don't like to use landfills too much anymore, because it say it pollutes the earth, and which it does. You're not supposed to put trash within the earth. So a lot of times, I think still in certain countries they use incineraries where they had these buildings, these factories, where all it does is accept trash that they burn it away into nothing. They burn it. They try to burn it out of existence. And a lot of times that pollutes the earth as well too. It pollutes the atmosphere. It pollutes the air that we breathe. You know. So you got multiple ways for garbage disposal, and this was one of the methods back in the ancient world. It was Hinnom, or Gehenna, which was a garbage disposal dump location south of Jerusalem, where things that were waste, that were no good, were basically cast to be destroyed. And it was symbolic and parabolic, like much of the scriptures is. Okay? Because the word symbolic and parabolic is like saying an allegory, an analogy, where you use characters and elements that seemingly has nothing to do with the point that you're establishing, but they do have some relation in how they're described and what they may be. All right. You got the allegory of the seeds being faith and how they were planted, and how you might plant certain plants, you know, in the regular physical world. You might have a garden and you might plant the seeds in certain locations, you know, in certain land, and it won't grow. But until you find that perfect plot of land where the ground is tilled very nice, it's freshened up, and you plant the seed there, then there'll be growth. You might end up planting some seeds. You might just throw seeds on the ground, hoping that you could grow apple trees, like Johnny Appleseed or whatever, right? And he might have threw some seeds to where there were stones. There were stones on the ground, and the seed didn't take its root. But some seeds probably landed perfectly in the dirt, got covered up, and they grew forth into being what they were supposed to be growing out to. Like, for example, of apple trees. All right. So that's a parable. That's an analogy. And even Gehenna, hell, Gehenna, aka hell, when you read into the scriptures, you can see all these scriptures in the Bible right here. where the word hell is used. It goes back to this Greek definition, Gehenna. That's what it's referring to. So this is where they try to get the concept of hell from, besides Hades. All right, or a place that you're cast to basically be destroyed. It's not a dimension, but it's going to be a physical location. Gehenna was wiped out before when Jerusalem was sacked, and it's going to be wiped out again. It's going to get wiped out in World War III, aka Armageddon, nuclear destruction, to clean out the land of Israel and preparing it for the true and real Israelites, not those fake phonies that are in the land right now. Those Caucasian so-called Jews, those Caucasian so-called Israelites, which are imposters. All right, the real authentic Israelites are going to be brought back eventually into the land, and more sooner than what many people would perceive and even expect. So another understanding for hell, all right, is that it's going to be a physical location on the earth. So let's touch on that real quick. This is the book of Revelation, or Revelations, the 20th chapter. We're going to begin about verse 12. And I saw the dead, small and great, stand before Yahweh power. And the books were open. And another book was open, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books according to their works. And the sea gave up the dead which were in it. And death and hell delivered up the dead which were in them. And they were judged every man according to their works, which the works is referring to keeping the laws of the Most High, to the best of your ability, of the 613 laws, not just 10 laws, aka commandments, but of the 600 plus laws, also known as commandments. Verse 14, and death and hell were cast into the lake of fire. And death and hell were cast into the lake of fire. Now, within common Christianity theme of saying, you know, if you get cast to the lake of hell fire, that means you're going to die, and then your soul is going to be put into another dimension, another realm, where you're going to burn forever, supposedly. Okay? But that's not the case, though, because we already established there is no multi-transdimensional location known as hell. You suffer in the flesh physically. Let me get a real quick precept for that. Okay. This is the book of Matthew, the 22nd chapter, verse 30. It says, for in the resurrection they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but as of the angels of the Most High power in heaven. See, the angels, they don't marry, they don't have sex, all right? They don't need to be eating food when they're in the spiritual realm with the Most High, because they're in spirit form, man. They can't be hurt unless the Most High wants them to, because all things are possible with the Most High. That's in the scriptures. But they had no need of the physical necessities like eating, sleeping, and all that. The urge to have sex, because they're in spiritual form. They're in their pure form, their pure energy-based form, so to speak, the spiritual form. All right. And they had no need for those physical things. So when you pass on, when you die, you can't feel pain. When you die, again, you cannot feel pain. So going back to Revelation, the 20th chapter, it says, and death and hell were cast into the lake of fire. Why was death and death, because that's what hell means, right? The grave, were cast into the lake of fire, into this physical location, which is going to be here on earth, just like Gehenna was here on earth and is still going to be here on earth. When it's destroyed again, then the day of judgment, Armageddon, when it's destroyed in the land of Israel, nuclear destruction, nuclear fire. The lake of fire is referring to Babylon. Babylon being the United States of America. And the first death was when the Most High flooded the earth with the rainwater during the great deluge, the global flood in the time of Noah. The second death is by fire, which is not going to encompass the whole entire earth. When you read Ecclesiastes, the first chapter, verse 4, it says the earth is not going to be destroyed. The earth will not be destroyed, man. All right, just certain parts is going to have great destruction on it, namely America, aka Babylon, the land of Israel, and other countries who's going to be involved in the Third World War, aka Armageddon. All right, Armageddon is in the Bible, and it's known as World War III in popular modern society today. And death and hell, which means that being mortal, particularly for the elect and the rest of the nation of Israel, including the 2/3, were cast into the lake of fire. And they're going to be cast away, done away with, as that's going to be non-existent to Israel once the second death is accomplished. Okay, when the prophecy of 2/3 being destroyed by the nuclear fire, the lake of fire here in America, Babylon, which is going to be their way of death, and how the 1/3, the 144,000, are going to be beamed up, the portion that's in America, in Babylon, and how they're going to escape when they're beamed up by the chariots of the Most High, aka spaceships, which you call UFOs. And whosoever was not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. And that's going to be with the 2/3, the Edomites, all right, and the rest of the nations. So at that, I want to say all praise to Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, double honor to the elders, great millstone. Shalom, hope you brothers were edified.